Hi guys, Stern-Brady here, and we are looking still at spiritual practices that lead to increased emotional health. And the one I want to talk about today is a little bit unique in being included in a list like this, but I think it's a really important one. The whole meaning of discipleship, the definition of discipleship really is just to become more like the leader that you're following. And so as we become disciples of Jesus Christ, we're successful in that if we're becoming more and more like him. And I love what Dallas Willard said about that. He wrote, "As Jesus' disciple, I am his apprentice in kingdom living. I am learning from him how to lead my life in the kingdom as he would lead my life if he were me. It is my faith in him that led me to become his disciple. My confidence in him simply means that I believe that he is right about everything, that all that he is and says shows what life is at its best, what it was intended by God to be." So, becoming like Jesus in the process of discipleship is not just because it makes Jesus happy, it's because it makes our lives good. It gives us the clearest path forward to abundant, eternal, fruitful life. And so, there's a really straightforward passage that gives us an idea of what it means to become like Jesus in one area. And it says this, it's Philippians 2. It says, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion," he's saying, if you want this at all, if there's any little bit of you that wants to become like Jesus, he says, "then make my joy complete by being like minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking at your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others." That's challenging. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. So he tells us this is how to become like Jesus in your relationships. And then he tells us he did not consider equality with God, though he was in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant. Being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. So Jesus came capable of doing anything, capable of calling the shots, of overturning kingdoms, of seizing the throne, capable of doing it any way he wanted to do it. But the way he came in was low. He came in humble. And that's the way of the cross. That's the way of the disciple. And so for me, humility is really hard, but really big deal. It's something that I think we're really lacking right now in Christendom, and our voices have gotten really loud and very demanding. And it's a good reminder to say Jesus, even being equal with God, did not use that to his advantage. And so, as I want to become like God, it's not so that I can use that to control other people or control the narrative or control the news cycle. It's so that I can become a better and better servant. And so, just two ways that that's become really real in my life recently. One is beginning to be very mindful about my motivations. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I about to say what I'm going to say? Why am I about to post what I'm going to post? Why am I about to do what I'm going to do? Is there anything inside of the motivation here that is birthed out of selfish conceit, out of envy, out of a desire for revenge, a desire to seem smart? Any of those things I want to weed out so that I can serve my world better and become more like Jesus. The second thing is really to look and ask the question, like Dallas Willard said, Jesus, if you were living my life, if you were going to use my voice in this world or my hands to serve this world, would you do this? Would you do what I'm about to do? And would you say what I'm about to say? And those two things have become really clarifying questions for me as I work to live out the life of a disciple. And so, my little challenge for you this week, it's really just simple. At the end of every day, just ask yourself the two questions, review how the day went, and ask yourself, what was my why? behind the things that I did and said. Usually at the end of the day, some conversation will stick out or some confrontation will stick out or something. And around that issue, I ask, did I do it? Did I live out pure motives in that? Was I humble? Was I a servant? And then the second thing is, in the way that I live today, is that the way you would have used this day? Is that the way you would have done it, Jesus, if you were living here in this house, on this street, in this city, and this day? And I think those two questions really help us get to the place where we can launch a lifelong habit of humility that leads to a healthy emotional life, a healthy spiritual life, and really healthy relationships in our world. So that's what I've got today. Keep hanging with us as we go through the spiritual practices that lead to emotional health.